right, my friends, I just pressed the Let's Go Live button, so let's wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plain of the internet. We have been out of the chair for a couple of days, and you know how it is when we're out of the chair for a couple of days. There are cobwebs all over the place, or FBI agents came in there mucking around, and so it takes a minute or two to flush out the tubes and to make sure things are working, but it is, which is great news. That means we can go ahead and get started. So let's do it, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney at the R&R Law Group located in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. And today, my friends, we are diving deep into the big lie. That's right. This is Joe Biden's big lie. This has been a story, a phrase that the left has been using against the right for a long time. Sort of Trump has been using it. A lot of people have been using this phrase. But today, it belongs, and I think for the future, directly to Joe Biden, the DNC, all of the big tech liars who really have been exposed, as we're going to get to today. So we've got 4 segments, all stemming from this story. Of course, the Twitter files were released over the weekend. Elon Musk had to cough up $44 billion to take control of the company. And only then were we able to see some of the actual truth. He turned it over to an actual journalist. Somebody goes by the name of Matt Taibbi. We're going to go through the thread. I know that many of you have probably already gone through it, but I want to spend some time on it because as we talked about on yesterday's Walk and Talk, it's a long one, but there's all sorts of branches that we can sort of jump off and go a little bit deeper into. So we'll take a look at who the players are, all the people who are involved in this. You see some of the people that we'll talk about today, including YOEL Roth. James Baker, remember him from the Sussman saga. Ro Khanna made an appearance, and we'll take a look at who got nuked off of Twitter. 2 names in particular, James Woods and Kayleigh McEnany, right? We're going to talk about both of those individuals. They both got nuked from Twitter. And we'll see what the Mac Store Apple owner, the guy who actually got the laptop, what he has to say about that as well. All in the very first segment. And that's just like getting warmed up. Okay, so that's just segment 1. Then we're going to come back and see further details about the actual big lie. Because this is not just like Twitter, private company, private entity just decided to cover this whole story up. This was orchestrated by Joe Biden, the guy who's currently in charge, the man who is right now our president. And we've got several clips from him. One where he was debating Trump. He said that it was, in fact, this is his son, right? He could talk to his son and say, hey, Hunter, what's going on with your laptop? He never did that. He instead lied to all of us and said this was all Russian planted misinformation. Jen Psaki, once they got into power, she continued on with that big lie, selling it to the American people. NPR, everybody in the media was lying about it for a long time. But we know that there was actual government involvement because of these depositions, which we're going to dig into today. Eric Schmidt, we have another attorney general from Louisiana, goes by the name of Jeff Loundry. Both these guys had posts on Twitter. They're in this big tech lawsuit. One of the people who's being deposed is Anthony Fauci. We'll probably get to that tomorrow. And we have Elvis Chan, which was a former FBI agent who was liaisoning with the big tech companies in Silicon Valley. And so they know that he was having weekly meetings with them and communicating what they wanted suspended. And so, sort of what Elon released is just the tip of the iceberg. Hawley is going after the Disinformation Governance Board. He sent a letter over asking them about their continuation of this program. They told us that they were disbanding the Disinformation Governance Board, but they're just rolling it into something else, right? They just got rid of Nina Jankowicz, but the goal is to monitor and censor Americans. And so they can't let that go easily. We're also going to look at this guy, YOEL Roth. Name is spreading all over the place. He is a former trust and safety advisor from Twitter. And he just gave a big interview. He sat down with somebody talking about democracy, and they asked him a bunch of questions about his time at Twitter, about some of the Hunter Biden stuff, about how this saga unfolded there. And we've got some very interesting clips. I mean, this was the guy who was in charge of trust and safety on Twitter. And so we'll have to ask ourselves if you would ever trust or feel safe with his stewardship of the platform. Now, he signed an affidavit that was submitted as part of a response to an FEC complaint that came out from Republicans. We're going to go through that because in that affidavit, he's making some pretty serious claims about his liaison with the government. And then CNN is just sort of covering this up, saying, well, it's really, really important that they felt safe or something. So we'll see what she had to say. And then in our final segment, of course, we'll revisit all of the clips from Donald Trump when he was trying to communicate ever so gently to the media that they were covering this whole thing up, that they were being totally dishonest, that they were in fact being criminal, and that Joe Biden did lie about Hunter. Before we get to a little clip from Joe Rogan and Jocko Willink, who are on his podcast, and they're all going, holy crap, this is a real thing. The deep state is really, really real. So as you can see, my friends, we have got a lot to get to. And if you want to be a part of the show, the best place to do that, the best place to support the work that we do and connect with people and share your own stories and get access to daily walk and talks every single day that I publish them, which is pretty regularly. You can go over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com, and they are chatting away over there. And you can see we've got some people in the chat. Oh, here. Yeah, see, here's what we're talking about. JC says liaison is a fancy word for intercourse. And Paul says Yoel is stunning and brave. Very brave. It's true. Very good points there. And so shout out to everybody over there on the Locals chat. Now, let's get this puppy queued up and get right down to business because we have a lot to attend to. And we don't want to waste any time if we can avoid it. And so before we jump in, let's make sure we are queued up to get rocking and rolling. The Twitter files released. Elon Musk promised this would happen for a long time. It has happened. We're going to go through the thread in detail, all of it exposing, of course, Hunter Biden seen here. Much of these photographs were censored, banned. We couldn't talk about it. All of it was hacked, fake, illegal misinformation until it turns out it was all true. And so now it's all been revealed to America. Now we're going to go through it, I said, in detail. But before we do, let's take a look at the key players, just so we have familiarity with who we're talking about as the names pop up. Of course, we all know Jack Dorsey, former CEO, big executive at Twitter. Don't really know whether he had much say or not. We're going to see in the Twitter thread that not really. We've got Vijaya Gadde, heard much about her. She was the head of legal at Twitter. She was on the Joe Rogan show. She was the person who sort of came up with the legal justifications to censor and trample all over the First Amendment. She was very important in this ordeal. We also have this guy, which we'll do a full segment on in another segment, about YOEL Roth. He was trust and safety, and he is responsible for making sure nobody, gets actually injured as a result of the misinformation, disinformation, and so on. We remember this person. His name is James Baker, ex-FBI general counsel for the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and he is now working at Twitter. Okay, so his emails are going to pop up. He was the general counsel for an intelligence agency before he went over to work for Twitter, which sort of begs the question, is the whole thing just a giant psyop or what? But he is over there, of course, and we're going to see emails from him. And this gentleman named Ro Khanna, that's not actually an R, that is a K, who is a Democrat from California, also made an appearance in this entire thread. So actually the only real sane person who is advocating for First Amendment protections is Ro Khanna. And so those are the players. Now, after we go through the thread, we're going to get reaction or actually see from the other people who were nuked. Kayleigh McEnany was Trump's press secretary at the time. James Woods was somebody who posted a tweet that got nuked from the Twitter platform. And finally, we'll check in with the Mac store. So a lot to get to in this segment. Let's jump right into the Twitter thread and see what Matt had unveiled for us. And this was all over the internet on all over the weekend. And of course, there's, been Twitter spaces. And this is evidently just the first drop of many, right? There's going to be much more of this to come. And Elon, even in a Twitter space over the weekend, said that he is working on releasing the entirety of the files, right? So at some point, Matt Taibbi is going to go through them, synthesize them, make them digestible for public consumption. But then after that, right, sounds like we're going to get the raw files, right? Like literally an image hard drive uploaded to like WikiLeaks style, which would just be, salivating. That would just be so great. And we would have a lot of fun with that. But until that day happens, we're going to go through the thread and we'll jump off here and explore where this takes us. Matt Taibbi releases the Twitter files. He posts a thread. He says, the Twitter files, dun dun. What you're about to read is the first installment in a series based upon thousands of internal documents obtained by sources at Twitter. Elon. The Twitter files tell an incredible story from inside one of the world's largest and most influential social media platforms. It is a Frankensteinian tale of a human-built mechanism grown out of the control of its designer. Twitter, in its conception, was a brilliant tool for enabling instant mass communication, making a true real-time global conversation possible for the first time. Maybe like a town square, some might say. In an early conception, Twitter more than lived up to its mission statement. It gave people the power to create and share ideas and information instantly without barriers. That's in quotes, right? That's Twitter's mission. On this channel, we talk about safety, clarity, and hope at my law firm, right? Or here, accountability, transparency, and justice. Those are the values. That's the mission. What are we trying to achieve? Those things. They want information communicated without barriers. Love it. Now, as time progressed, however, the company was slowly forced to add those barriers. Some of the first tools for controlling speech were designed to combat the likes of spam and financial fraudsters. But slowly, over time, Twitter staff and executives began to find more and more use for these tools. Outsiders began petitioning the company to manipulate speech as well. First, a little, then a little more often, and then constantly. Floodgates were open. Pandora's box had been revealed. By 2020, requests from connected actors to delete tweets were routine. One executive would write to another, quote, "More to review from the Biden team." The reply would come back, "Handled." Here is an excerpt from Matt Taibbi. This email was sent on Saturday, October 24, 2020. Kind of an important date, isn't it? Yeah, because the election is just a couple weeks away in November. Yeah. Trump versus Biden. We've got more to review from the Biden team. We don't know exactly who this came from. Blanked out at twitter.com wrote, more to review from the Biden team. Jared, Twitter account, Let, JSJX, Ozwin, Guy Swigs, they're all on the list. Thanks all, somebody said. Can you remove these? And down at the bottom, you see on Saturday at a mere 8:28 p.m. So just less than 3 hours later, boom, deleted. Handled these, they said. Now that's a campaign communicating to a private company about posts that they don't like. And there's not even much conversation taking place about any of this. Handled these. Removed them, right? Presumably that's what that means. Deleted. Sort of like out of a movie, right? Get the phone call. Is it done? It's done. Click. Phone gets evaporated, right? That's what's happening now. The Biden administration doing that. Celebrities and unknown alike could be removed or reviewed at the behest of a political party. This is what a conversation looked like on October 25th. 9:58 in the morning. Email comes in. I grabbed the first one under SI. So actually let's start at the bottom. At October 24th, 2020, 6:54 p.m., an additional report came in from the DNC. And look at these names. Oh my goodness. We've got Stephen Lujan had a status, and another one from Real James Woods. James Woods, the actor? Yeah, the actor. That's that guy. He says, or somebody sends over a response. They say, I grabbed the first one under SI, but I'm going to defer to safety on the high profile second one. Let me translate that for you. It means this first tweet is from some loser nobody who nobody cares about. So we'll just censor him. I grabbed the first one under SI, whatever. But the other one, somebody's going to care about if I have to nuke that one. So why don't we escalate that one? Why doesn't that go up to the higher status? Now, what tweet was that, you might ask? It is something that was able to be looked up, of course, over on the archives. All right, what happens next? Now, both parties, according to Matt, had access to these tools. For instance, in 2020, requests from both the Trump White House, and the Biden campaign were received and honored. This system wasn't balanced. It was based on contacts. Now, because Twitter was and is overwhelmingly staffed by people of one political orientation, there are more ways to complain open to the left other than to the right, right? So big chunks of people are donating to the Democrats, which presumably means they're going to be supportive of the Democrats. The resulting slant in content moderation is visible in documents you're about to read. However, it's also the assessment of multiple current and former high-level executives. The Twitter files, he starts, part 1, and the how and the why Twitter blocked the laptop story. It starts. On October 14, 2020, the New York Post published Biden's secret emails, an expose based on the contents of the Abaddon laptop. Now, if you were here on this channel back in, of course, October 2020, we were going hard on this story. I mean, we spent most of the rest of October talking about this. We had Tony Bobulinski. We had all of the files, all of the emails that were leaked. This was a national story, and we covered it in depth, right? We've spent a lot of time on Hunter. Now, it says that Matt continues, he says, Twitter, after that story broke, Twitter took extraordinary steps to suppress the story. They removed links. They posted warnings that links may be unsafe. They even blocked the transmission via direct message. You couldn't even send the story to another person. A tool hitherto reserved for the most extreme cases, aka CP. Now, it's funny, YouTube's saying that we're getting some pretty blurry, pretty blurry video on YouTube. Are we coming in okay on locals and on Rumble? Hopefully. Yeah, Dana says it looks good over there. So that's interesting. Yeah, that's good over on locals. It looks good on my end. That's interesting. All right. Blurry on YouTube. Well, hopefully we don't get a strike for any of this stuff. Twitter is a potato cam, says Paul. Locals looks good, though. That's weird. It's blurry on Rumble. All right, let me see if I can swap a setting or something real quick to adjust. Nope, that I can't do it in the middle of a stream. All right, well, we'll just keep going and we'll see if it clears up. Now, Matt continues. He says, Twitter took extraordinary steps to suppress the story, removing links and posting warnings that it may be unsafe. They even blocked its transmission. White House spokesman Kayleigh McEnany was locked out of her account for tweeting about the story, prompting a furious letter from the Trump campaign staffer, somebody named Mike Hahn, who seethed, quote, at least pretend to care for the next 20 days. His email was sent on October 14, 2020 at 7:19 p.m. Subject, urgent, Kayleigh McEnany. 2, C. Strom at Twitter, Lauren DeVol at Twitter, Twitter and government politics, gov@twitter.com. McEnany, writes the person, from Mike Hahn at donaldtrump.com, says this to Twitter. Kayleigh has been locked out of her account for simply talking about the New York Post story. All she did was cite the story in firsthand reporting that has been reported by other outlets and not disputed by the Biden campaign. I don't need an answer. I need an answer immediately on when and how she will be unlocked. I don't appreciate how nobody on this team called me regarding the news that you'll be censoring news articles. Like I said, at least pretend to care for the next 20 days. Just pretend. Because the election is coming up in November. So they took out James Wood for talking about the story, for posting an image, a fake meme. They banned or severely censored the New York Post story, and they just nuked Trump's press secretary off of her account in October. Matt says this led public policy executive Carolyn Strom to send out a polite WTF email. Several employees noted that there were tension between comms and policy teams who had little and less control over moderation and the safety and trust teams. Here's the email from Carolyn. It says, hi team, are you able to take a closer look here? Thank you. Strom's note returned the answer that the laptop story had been removed for a violation of the company's, quote, hacked material policy. This is what it looked like. Elaine Ong Sato on the global escalations team, she's an ops analyst, said, hi, Carolyn. Hey, thanks for reaching out to us. Per checking, the user was bounced by site integrity for violating our hacked materials policy. Adding them here for further insights and guidance. Okay. So that's Kayleigh McEnany, Trump's press secretary, hacked materials policy. All right. Although several sources recalled hearing about, quote, a general warning from federal law enforcement about possible foreign hacks, there's no evidence that I've seen of any government involvement in the laptop story, right? This is Matt Taibbi. Now, this is a big criticism of this post. A lot of people on the left, a lot of people who are saying this is a big nothing burger are all responding on this point. They're saying that, so what, right? This is a private Biden campaign who's communicating directly to Twitter. They should be allowed to do whatever they want. We'll get to this. Okay, there's all sorts of government involvement in the next segment. Now, Matt says the decision was made at the highest levels of the company, but without the knowledge of CEO Jack Dorsey. No idea. Without the former head of legal, policy, and trust, Vijaya played a key role. We're familiar with her from the Joe Rogan show. They just freelanced it, is how one former employer characterized the decision. Hacking was the excuse, but within a few hours, pretty much everyone realized that that wasn't going to hold. But no one had the guts to reverse it. You can see the confusion in the following exchange, which ends up including God and former trust and safety chief YOEL Roth, who we'll talk about soon. Comms official Trenton Kennedy writes, I'm struggling to understand the policy basis for marking this unsafe. He writes, New York Post Hunter Biden laptop article, privileged and confidential, says our teams continue to investigate the origins of the material included in the reporting. Trenton says, I'm struggling to understand the basis for marking this unsafe. I think the best explainability argument for this externally, meaning for everybody else, the public relations of this, would be that we're waiting to understand if this story is the result of hacked materials. We're waiting to see, right? Just sort of a gray area. We'll face hard questions on this if we don't have some kind of solid reasoning for marking this unsafe. Copied YOEL, copied Summers, copied Plunkett, copied Roseboro. Katie responds and says, are we going to mark similar stories unsafe? Like, this is a new policy that we're doing because, it's kind of dicey on this. It sounds like this is a whole new policy, but they didn't really report it this way. So, right, Katie is saying, this sounds like a change. Should we make this change for other stories that pop up? So they're having this back and forth. By this point, everyone knew the situation was effed, writes Taibbi. Said one former employee, but the response was essentially to err on the side of continuing to err, right? They've already made a giant mistake. They can't reverse course. Otherwise, they've got to acknowledge that they're censors and hacks of the election. Now, Eli Roth, or YOEL Roth, not Eli, says the policy basis is hacked materials. Okay, this is this guy we're going to hear a lot more from later. Says, though, as discussed, this is an emerging situation where the facts remain unclear, Roth. Given the severe risks here, he says, and lessons of 2016, what does that mean? Trump won. We don't want that to happen again. Says, we're erring on the side of including a warning and preventing this content from being amplified. Vijaya, lawyer, says, well, what's the warning that's going to come up? YOEL says, well, when you click the link, you're going to see a generic URL that references spam, malware, violations. It's not ideal, but it's really the only thing we have. Okay, so their current policy doesn't cover this, so they have to create some workaround for it because they hate the story. So it's a bunch of people who are trying to just sort of rig something up in order to pass their policy basis muster. Ian Plunkett says, whatever we do in the comms, this will become a bias claim for Jack pre-hearing immediately, right? CEO is like, he's knowing Jack's going to get hit over the head with this. Let's make it clear we're proactively but cautiously interpreting this through the lens of our hack materials policy and allowing the link with a warning and a significant reduction of spread down there at the bottom. All of that is conversations between Twitter executives. Now, I'm trying to figure out why it is still so bad quality on YouTube's end. Everything looks good on my end. This is strange. I don't know. We'll carry on. Of course, we'll post all of the clips later. So if you don't want to watch it here, it's weird. It's fine on locals, they say. Matt Taibbi, former VP of Global Comms, asks, you guys, can we say this is accurate? Brandon responds, he says, look, to Ian's point, can we truthfully claim that this is part of the policy? For example, is this part of our approach to addressing potentially hacked materials? I mean, we're limiting visibility of some stories while our investigation is ongoing. Like, Let's think this through. And the former deputy general counsel for the FBI, advises to stay on course. Now, if you recall, let's take a look at who this individual is. We have James Baker. He used to work at the FBI. He sat down in the 2016 election with who? Guess who? Michael Sussman. What did Michael Sussman bring to him? Allegations that Trump was involved in Russian collusion. The whole thing was fake. Michael Sussman was charged with crimes for that, acquitted by a jury of his peers, literal Democrat peers who said, no, you're fine. We don't care about this type of stuff. And he walked away from this. After all of that ended in 2016, James Baker left the FBI, went to work at Twitter so that they could make sure that, this type of stuff on social media never happened again. And Trump could never win again, more or less. And Taibbi continues. He says, okay, this guy responds. Baker says, I support the conclusion that we need more facts. He's a lawyer. He used to work at the FBI. He knows as well as we do that there's a lot of truth to what we were covering at this time. Okay. Tony Bobulinski, there were emails, there were all sorts of corroborating evidence all over the place. But Jim Baker hated the story because it was good for Trump and bad for Biden. He says, I support the conclusion that we need more facts to assess whether the materials were hacked. At this stage, however, it is reasonable for us to assume that they may have been and that caution is warranted. There are some facts that indicate that the materials may have been hacked, while there are others indicating that the computer was either abandoned or the owner consented to allow the repair shop to access it for at least some purposes. We simply need more information. And they just need more time, right? As long as there's enough additional time until, kind of after the election, that's good enough. Taibbi continues. He says, a fundamental problem with tech companies and content moderation is as follows. Many people in charge of speech know or care little about speech. You're kidding. And have been told the basics by outsiders. Here's an example. In one humorous exchange on day one, after Kayleigh got nuked, Democratic Congressman Ro Khanna reaches out to Gotti, the lawyer for Twitter, to gently suggest that she hop on a phone call to talk about the backlash re-speech regarding free speech. Khanna was the only Democratic official I could find who expressed concerns. And so shout out to our friend Ro Khanna, free speech hero. Here's what the message says. October 14th, after Kayleigh got nuked, says, hey, Vijaya, generating huge backlash on the Hill regarding speech. Happy to chat if you're up for it. Don't nuke Trump's press secretary. Gotti doesn't want to even talk to him. He doesn't care. She's like, what are you, a congressman? I don't care. What are you emailing me for? You don't work here. Says, hi, Congressman Khanna. Thank you for reaching out. We appreciate the heads up that Congress is upset. Nobody cares. We put out a clarifying thread of tweets earlier. So go read my tweets about it. This evening to explain our policy around the posting of private information and linking directly to hacked materials. If you didn't get it, that's your own fault. Don't bother me. The press secretary's account was not permanently suspended. We just requested that she delete the tweet containing the material that's in violation of our rules, and her account is restricted until she complies. I'm happy to jump on the phone if helpful. I don't really want to talk to you, but if you really want me to, I'll do it. Otherwise, go read my tweet thread. I'm done with you. My team in DC, Jessica and Lauren, are copied here, and they're also available to discuss. Okay, so she just nukes a congressman. Just getting rid of the whole thing. I don't even want to talk to you. Leave me alone. Khanna says, okay, well, I wanted to talk to you on the phone about this, but you don't even want to talk to me. If a congressman calls you, he kind of probably wants to have an off-the-record conversation, a bunch of stuff that's not in writing. And she didn't catch that hint. She's like, well, I'll just respond an email to you. Okay. So then Khanna responds. Now he tries to reroute the conversation to the First Amendment. She has a lot of disdain for it, obviously. Khanna writes back to Vijaya, says, hope you're well, Vijaya. Well, thanks for the update in your tweet thread, but this seems a violation of First Amendment principles. If there is a hack of classified information or other information that could expose, for example, a serious war crime, and the New York Times was to publish that, I think the New York Times should have that right. Guess what they do? A journalist should not be held accountable for the illegal actions of the source unless they actively aided the hack. Didn't happen here. So, to restrict the distribution of that material, especially regarding a presidential candidate, seems not in the keeping of principles of New York Times versus Sullivan. I say this as a total Biden partisan and convinced that he didn't even do anything wrong. But the story now has become more about censorship than the relatively innocuous emails, and it's become a bigger deal than it would have been. I believe Twitter itself, says Rowe, should curtail what it recommends or puts in trending news, and your policy against QAnon is all good. He says, I know it's a hard balance, but in the heat of a presidential campaign, restricting dissemination of newspaper articles, even if it is the New York Post, is far right. He says, seems like it will invite more backlash than it will do good. Totally right. Please keep this communication between just us and Jack. No need to CC the team or forward to them. I just wanted to offer my 2 cents. Right? And she's like, I could have told you all this on the phone, but I'll put it in writing. I think what you're doing is against the law. It's against the Constitution, and how dare you? But she didn't want to talk to him about it, and so now it's all coming out publicly. Now, of course, this is right? This is the right approach. They should have allowed it to fly. They shouldn't have censored it. What they did was really disgusting and dishonest, and they should be ashamed of themselves. But it worked. They got exactly what they wanted. They won the election. So do they care? Are they feeling bad about it? I doubt it. Now, let's carry on. Taibbi says, within a day, head of public policy Lauren Culbertson receives a ghastly letter and a report from somebody named Carl Szabo, the research firm called Net Choice. This had already polled 12 members of Congress, and they're angry. 3 Republicans, 3 Democrats from the House Judiciary Committee are all upset about this. Szabo sends this letter October 15th after McEnany got nuked. Says, subject of the Hill's convos about Biden and, quote, censorship. Dear Lauren, yesterday, Net Choice, the company owner, somebody named Chris, met informally with 9 Republicans and 3 Democrat House staffers to gather intel about Facebook and Twitter and the New York Post story. The staffers hail from the House Judiciary Committee to Rep. Judy Chu's office. Right. So he's saying, in other words, the Republicans are pissed. Net Choice lets Twitter know a bloodbath awaits in the upcoming Hill hearings. Members saying we're at a tipping point on this. Tech has grown so big that they can't even regulate themselves. So government may need to intervene. He says, let me summarize this for you over there, Vijaya. High level takeaway. Every Republican said, quote, this is a tipping point. It's just too much. And both Democrats and Republicans were angry. Szabo reports to Twitter that some Hill figures are characterizing the laptop as Tech's Access Hollywood moment, saying, when asked just how bad the situation is, one staffer said, quote, it's Tech's Access Hollywood moment, and it has no Hillary to hide behind. Others were even more blunt. Tech is screwed, and rightfully so. But it continues. Szabo's letter contains chilling passages relaying Democrats' attitudes. They want more moderation. And as for the Bill of Rights, they say, well, who cares about it? It's not absolute anyways. The Democrats, according to Szabo, meanwhile complain that companies are inept. They let conservatives muddy the water, and they make the Biden campaign look corrupt, even though Biden's innocent. They link this to Hillary Clinton's email scandals. She did nothing wrong, but the press wouldn't let the story go. It became a scandal far out of proportion. In their mind, social media is doing the same thing. It doesn't moderate enough harmful content, so when it does, like it did yesterday, it becomes a story. These people are nuts. If the companies moderated more, conservatives wouldn't even think to use social media for disinfo, misinfo, or otherwise. The Democrats were in agreement. Social media needs to moderate more because they're corrupting democracy and they're making all truth relative. When pushed on how the government might insist on that, consistent with the First Amendment, they demurred. They said the First Amendment isn't absolute. Sick people. Very sick. Now, the subplot continues. An amazing subplot of this is how much of this was done without the knowledge of Jack Dorsey, the CEO, and how long it took for the situation to get uneffed, as one ex-employee put it. There are multiple instances in the files of Dorsey intervening to question the suspension for accounts all across the political spectrum. But the problem with the hack materials ruling, several sources said, was that this normally required an official law enforcement finding of a hack. Of course, that's not what happened here. Hunter Biden's laptop was left and it was abandoned. But such a finding never appears throughout one executive describes as a whirlwind, a 24-hour company-wide mess because they had to censor Kaylee. Somebody sends this. They say, "Hi, Owls. As you are probably aware, Twitter actioned tweets yesterday relating to 2 New York Post articles." Is this from Dorsey? I think it's from Dorsey. Multiple instances of Dorsey intervening. He says, "Hi, Owls. As you're probably aware, Twitter actioned tweets yesterday from 2 New York Post articles that were tweeted out that allegedly included pictures of emails from a laptop belonging to Hunter, Joe Biden's son, presidential candidate. Our teams made the determinations that the materials fall under our hacked materials policy. And in addition to our sharing of personal information, so the links were actioned. As you may know, the existing policy framework was launched in 2018 to mitigate real harm based on hack and leak scenarios coming out of the 2016 election, which again was also largely, fraudulent, really. I mean, I guess if you wanted to put WikiLeaks, like sort of the WikiLeaks hack into that category, but that was something that had been going on, I think, well before the 2016 election. The big October surprise in 2016 was James Comey's conclusion that he was not going to do anything about it, right? That was what they were so upset about. But the ClintonEmail.com server was something that was percolating for, a long time even before that. And she was escaping liability, even after, since Benghazi and all of that, right? She's been in this mess for a long time. So the 2018 and all of these additional frameworks, in my opinion, were coming out to stop conservatives, right? To stop Republicans, to mitigate the harm of disinfo and of advocacy and of effective conversation taking place that might harm the Democrats. After Trump won, they all went, "Oh my gosh, we got to create entire new frameworks to stop this from happening again." Dorsey continues. He says, "Several high-profile accounts, including press outlets, were impacted by this decision and were actioned. Unfortunately, the language was provided in the product and may have created confusion, indicating the links were spam or unsafe, and consequently, Twitter explained the reasoning here in a thread." Now, this morning, the New York Post tweeted additional links to stories that contain pictures and screenshots of emails that were also actioned. The teams determined that a Trump campaign tweet that was previously actioned for containing PPI would not be reactioned because it was retweeted without the PPI blurred. I know there are questions you probably have, and also probably getting a lot of incoming from stakeholders, governments, academics, civil society, angry conservatives, MAGA insurrectionists. The last 24 hours certainly have been a whirlwind with lots of curves and unknowns, and we fully expect the issues surrounding this matter to continue to swirl in the coming days. So thank you to everyone for their patience, right? Total disaster there. Now, Taibbi says, in conclusion, that it's been a whirlwind 96 hours for me too. There's much more to come, including answers to questions about issues like shadow banning and boosting and follower counts and the fate of individual accounts and more. These issues are not limited to the political right. Gets everybody. Good night, everyone, he says. Thanks to all those who picked up the phone in the last few days. Now, that is the Twitter thread from Matt Taibbi. And let's check back in on him and see if he's got anything new for us while we're here. He posted yesterday a link to Jonathan Turley talking about James Baker, who, of course, was with the FBI. And, of course, he's got some other stuff that he's posting. So, of course, this is Matt Taibbi. You can go follow him. He's going to have some additional drops, evidently, that are coming out this week. And I wanted to see if Elon maybe had an update for us on that before we carry on, because he said that they may be coming out today or in the next few days is what he said. And Elon's in the house. So many interesting posts talking about the space arc. And I don't think we have any additional comments on when the next drop will be. But if you see anything, let me know, okay? And in the meantime, we'll carry on. All right, so that's what's going on there out of the Twitter thread. Now, we know the players, all of these people are involved. We're going to see some reaction from James Woods and Kayleigh McEnany. Actually, that's when she got nuked. And we're going to listen to the clip, several clips from the Mac store owner, the guy who was actually responsible for transmitting the materials over to Rudy Giuliani and their team. But first, let's talk about 4 Patriots. I've got a story. A tree branch hit a power line back in Ohio, 2003. It shut down 21 power plants. Around 100 people died. We have a power grid in America, my friends, that was designed in the 1800s. Even the White House sees it. They're saying that 2/3 of the grid are at least 25 years old. And they recently announced billions of dollars to update it. How long is it going to take to actually do that? Forever. It's the government. That's why having your own solar power is more important now than ever. And with the Patriot power generator, you get a solar generator that doesn't install into your house. It's portable. You can take it with you, even use it inside. It's powerful enough for your phone, your medical devices, and even your fridge. And right now, you can go to 4patriots.com and use promo code Robert to get 10% off your first purchase on anything in the store, including this Patriot Power Generator. Look at this thing. It's a beauty. You'll also get their famous guarantee for an entire year after your order, free shipping on anything over $97. A portion of every sale is donated to charities who support our veterans and their families. And so you can go to 4patriots.com and use code Robert to get 10% off your order. That's 4patriots.com. Use code Robert. 3-month food survival, 4-week survival, 1-year survival, Patriot Power Generator, all at 4patriots.com. All right. And so now let's head on over and see what some of this reaction looks like. Now, before we take a look at what James Wood had to say, this was Kayleigh McEnany reacting to her ultimate Twitter ban. We just read through the inside scene, right? What it looked like from inside Twitter headquarters. But this is Kayleigh McEnany reacting to it when it happened in real time.
And it's not a temporary blockage. When I log onto my Twitter account, it says I'm permanently banned. They essentially have me at gunpoint and said, unless you delete a news story reported by the New York Post, I cannot regain access to my account. This is censorship. It is not the American way. This is not how a freedom-loving democracy operates. And we have to hold Twitter accountable. And Facebook, too, is banning the transmission of the story simply because ideologically it hurts the side of the aisle that Silicon Valley prefers. It's sad. It's censorship. This is not America.
Yeah, well,
it is sad. It really is disappointing that that's sort of the situation that we're in, where private individuals are getting their accounts sort of nuked at the behest of the Democratic Party. This is James Woods. He was finding out about this on sort of in real time as the Twitter thread was being released from Matt Taibbi. Tucker Carlson got him on the phone and asked him questions. You know, how does it feel to be somebody who is censored by the DNC, specifically requested that your account get nuked? Here's James Woods.
Accused me of saying that she gave a Nazi salute, and there was a whole bunch of stuff about it on Twitter, and I didn't. I actually asked, why would somebody say that about her? Without going into the details of that lawsuit, it turned out that the DNC was behind that. I won the lawsuit in federal court. It wasn't reported very much. I've been a target of these people for 6 years. They have destroyed my career. They have destroyed my livelihood. They've destroyed my faith in a country that my family has defended in the military since the Revolutionary War. I'm about to be inducted into Sons of the American Revolution, the Sons of the Revolution. I cannot. You're catching me a bit off guard because I literally just walked in the door, and my wife said, "Have you seen your phone?" I was at the firing range, believe it or not, practicing
for you.
My rights under the Second Amendment, which I guess now that I don't have any First Amendment rights anymore, I'm glad that I still have some Second Amendment rights. I think the whole thing is astonishing. I'm for the first time in my life, honestly speechless.
Well, it is astonishing, and as you just pointed out,
he says he's going to sue.
I will be getting a lawyer.
Here he is.
To you one thing, more than anything else you'll ever hear in your life. I will be getting a lawyer. I will be suing the Democratic National Committee no matter what, whether I win or lose. I am going to stand up for the rights that every American, not a so-called celebrity. I'm not a celebrity. I'm hardly recognizable anymore because my career has been destroyed by these very people. And I will sue, and I'm hoping other people will sue. And if it turns out there are a lot of us on this list where the DNC targeted us, and I will quote the immortal words of Joseph Welch when he attacked Joe McCarthy for the enemies list he had, "At long last, sir, have you no shame?"
Yes.
President Biden, all of your Stasi little operatives in the DNC who have targeted American citizens, have you, Mr. President, have all of you at last no shame?
They don't, James. They have no shame at all. They would do it again. They would do it harder if they could. And they may try. They're fighting very hard to keep this power. They do not want Elon to have any control at all. And so shout out to James Woods for standing up, man. He's been fighting this for a long time. And if you listen to the full clip on the Tucker Show, he talks about his whole career being evaporated and destroyed as a result of these people. You speak truth, they call you a conspiracy theorist. You speak truth, they call you a liar, a bigot, a racist, somebody who's trying to undermine America, a MAGA extremist. You know all the list. You've been called them all. And, you know, for somebody like him in his career, in his space, in his industry, it's catastrophic. It takes out the whole business, right? It takes out his whole livelihood. Gone. Even though he was being honest and truthful about it. All right, so horrific thing that's happening in America, but others have been vindicated. This is the Apple Mac Store owner, the gentleman who got the Hunter Biden laptop and turned it over to the FBI before ultimately turning it over to Rudy Giuliani and the Trump campaign.
Actually, I was really lucky that I could avoid bankruptcy. If it wasn't actually for the kindness of individuals across the country that contributed to my friend's Give, Send, Go that has kept me out of bankruptcy. So I'm grateful for that.
Almost
and
ruined
now
his
with
life,
the
too.
America Project funding my future lawsuits against Adam Schiff, Politico, CNN, Hunter Biden,
Yes.
and the campaign to elect Joe Biden.
Oh, yes, get them all.
I'm not going to wait for the Department of Justice to act.
Name 'em.
I'm going to try
Perfect.
to
Good.
do what I can on my front. I'm also going to try to do what I can to work with Congress to make sure they have all the resources, materials. I just came out with a book that basically chronicles the entire ordeal, which I first want to just say I can't begin to thank Miranda Devine enough. I wouldn't
Shout
have
out
been
to
able
Miranda
to publish
Devine.
my book if it wasn't for the opportunity she provided me. So I'm grateful for her. But I've mapped everything out. There's a timeline. I have time and date stamps. I have fresh, clean copies of Drive. I'm ready to go to war with this, and I'm not gonna stop until it's over.
But you know, this
Good for him. Right now, he had his life screwed. They said he was some sort of. My understanding is the guy's not even a conservative, right? He's sort of not even a political person, and they called him, a Russian hack, disinformation, this, that, or the other. They wrecked this guy's life. Listen.
Good morning, John Paul. It's great to see you again. Since we last spoke, all four of us here together, there's been a lot that's happened, including as recently as last night. I'm just curious, after you've seen everything unfold and you saw some of Elon in the last couple of days, what are your thoughts?
Finally vindicated. Okay, there have been a ton of people, and we talked about this on the morning walk and talk yesterday. Miranda Devine, Garrett Ziegler, there are Julie Kelly, tons of people who have done an amazing job on this story. And we did a full interview with Garrett Ziegler. There's the laptop report. You can see all of it. And for a long time, even the Republicans didn't want to talk about it, right? And they may still not want to talk about it, but where was Mitch McConnell? Where was Kevin McCarthy? Where were these people pounding the table about any of this stuff? Where was, any of the demands for inquiries or any of these things from the mainstream part of the Republicans, right? All of this stuff was delegated to sort of the far right, alt-right, all the people who were already nuked off Twitter and had to go find new homes in Parler and Gab and True Social and all of the other, Getter and all of these other locations and Rumble and Locals, right? And now Elon, $44 billion purchase. The only way to get access to this stuff, the only way to run it up the flagpole so enough people can see it is to go through all of this. And so shout out to all those people who've been beating this story for years. Now this guy, finally, it's all coming out. Elon shines one of the biggest spotlights on the world to all of his 119, maybe 120 million followers. How does it feel, sir?
Well, I'm grateful. I don't know how many people know, but I basically was financially ruined by Twitter last year. I tried to save my career because Twitter labeled my actions hacking. I went after them in a defamation suit. I think, though, ultimately the goal from the opposition was to make sure that Twitter would cut my legs off and make sure that I would never have an opportunity to fight my battles in the court of law again. So obviously watching Elon released this material over on Friday night was very exciting for me because what I felt like I knew the whole time was true. And I feel vindicated. I feel I'm grateful for Elon. If he wants free tech support, he's got it. It's refreshing. It's obviously, if he had bought Twitter during the lawsuit, I think things would have worked out a little bit better for me. But you know what? It is what it is, and I'm grateful that the truth is coming out now, and that I'm vindicated.
All right, so he is, doing better now that everything is sort of over, and he's very grateful that this has all come out. So are we. And so we'll continue to cover, of course. Matt Taibbi is going to have additional drops. Elon will have additional drops. And we'll talk about it all when it is available and it hits. So that's on the first segment. Now, we've got to change gears. Now, we've got 4 segments. They're all in the same story. But I want to zoom in on a couple different elements, including the big lie. The big lie has been a phrase that the Democrats use, been a phrase that Trump has used. Now we can rightfully assign it directly to Joe Biden because he lied to all of us. In fact, he said that the Hunter Biden laptop was Russian disinformation, which is very curious, because he's relying on all of these intelligence people, the 50-something so-called ex-CIA, ex-former FBI, whatever they were, very intelligent, and they were going to give us their assessment on what was happening with this laptop story. The problem is, Joe Biden, he could have just gone directly to his son. Okay, Hunter Biden is his son. He could just go to Hunter and say, "Dear Hunter, was that your laptop that everybody's talking about? Is that you smoking crack in your bed? Is that you with those hookers? What is going on here? Can you tell me, son? Did you drop that off? Yes or no?" And so if he didn't have that conversation, or if Hunter lied to him, then we've got questions about that because he said Hunter Biden's the smartest man he's ever known. And it feels like if Hunter was dishonest with him, and he knew that he was a drug addict who may have been responsible for stuff exactly like this, maybe Joe Biden should have done a little bit of a deeper dive before he promised us this. Joe Biden in a debate with Trump, lying to America, saying that the Hunter Biden laptop story was confirmed disinformation.
50 former national intelligence folks who said that what he's accusing me of is a Russian plant. They have said that this has all the 5 former heads of the CIA, both parties, say what he's saying is a bunch of garbage.
This is classic Trump. We have 4 days left, and all of a sudden there's a laptop. There's overwhelming evidence that from the intelligence community that the Russians are engaged.
I still think that the stories from the fall about your son Hunter were Russian disinformation and a smear campaign, like you said.
Yes. I know you'd ask it. I have no response. It's another smear campaign. It's a last-ditch effort in this desperate campaign to smear me and my family. The vast majority of the intelligence people have come out and said there's no basis at all.
Okay, but you could have just gone and asked your son. You could have just gone and asked Hunter Biden, was that your laptop? You could have checked his credit card statements, which is probably being routed right into your, portfolio, whatever. So it is an outright lie, right? This would be like a parent. A parent is relying on the CIA, ex-CIA and ex-FBI, rather than providing the information from their own son about any of this. Absolutely insane that they would continue with this big lie, but they did, and it worked. They won. And after they won, it was Jen Psaki who continued to proffer the big lie when she took the press secretary's podium. This is Psaki responding to Ducey, not interested in the laptop story because of, you called it, Russian disinformation.
The president has said, and you have tweeted, that allegations of wrongdoing based on files pulled from Hunter Biden's laptop are Russian disinformation. There is a new book by a Politico reporter that finds some of the files on there are genuine. Is the White House still going with Russian disinformation?
I think it's broadly known and widely known, Peter, that there was a broad range of Russian disinformation back in 2020.
Okay.
Broad range. So that must include all of the official Hunter laptop stuff. All right. And I saw Zulu's in the house. Shout out for the Psaki clip to Zulu. More's coming up, Zulu. We'll get your question about Trump's Constitution comment in a minute. Now, NPR also has this story, posted this October 22nd when this landed. NPR, why haven't you seen any stories about Hunter Biden's laptop? And they said, well, we don't want to waste our time on stories that are not really stories. And we don't want to waste the listeners and the readers' time with stories that are just pure distractions. Terrence Samuels published that. He's the Office of the Public Editor, October 22nd, 2020. So NPR is just an extension of the government, right? And of course, this story was all true. They didn't think it was true because it hurt Joe Biden and it was very good for Donald Trump. And so they censored and they selectively edited because they are partisan political hacks. NPR should be defunded. I don't even know why they get $1 from the United States. Now, we'll listen to a little bit more from Jen Psaki right after we talk about our friends over at Goldco. If you have an IRA or a 401k or a savings account, you know that things are scary out there. The Biden administration has already printed more money in the past 2 years than the previous 100 years combined. The national debt hit a record $30 trillion. Inflation is the highest we've seen since 1982. It's only a matter of time before the house of cards comes crashing down. If you have retirement savings, your money could be at serious risk. Talk to my friends at Goldco. See how you can protect your retirement with gold and silver before it's too late. Go to robertlikesgold.com. They'll give you $10,000 or more in free silver when you open up a qualifying account at robertlikesgold.com. They're an A+ rated business with the Better Business Bureau, and they're friends of the program. Check it out at robertlikesgold.com. All right. One of the main criticisms of Matt Taibbi's release was that there was no evidence of government involvement, right? This was between a private entity called the Biden administration and Twitter, another private entity. But when people go digging through the clips, we know that there was a lot more collusion taking place between the government, the FBI, and the big tech companies. In fact, Jen Psaki communicated that to us here.
Thanks, Jen. Can you talk a little bit more about this request for tech companies to be more aggressive in policing misinformation? Has the administration been in touch with any of these companies? And are there any actions that the federal government can take to ensure their cooperation? Because we've seen from the start there's not a lot of action on some of these platforms.
Sure. Well, first, we are in regular touch with these social media platforms, and those engagements typically happen through members of our senior staff, but also members of our COVID-19 team. Given, as Dr. Murthy conveyed, this is a big issue of misinformation, specifically on the pandemic. In terms of actions, Alex, that we have taken, or we're working to take, I should say, from the federal government, we've increased disinformation research and tracking within the Surgeon General's office. We're flagging problematic posts for Facebook that spread disinformation.
We're flagging posts for Facebook that spread misinformation and disinformation. So there was this entire infrastructure that was already set up where the government could liaison with the big tech companies so that they can just censor whatever they want. They just decide, oh, it's misinformation, and now we're in big trouble. And now Jen Psaki admitted it all. So the question becomes, of course, did that stuff happen previously? Has that stuff happened historically? There's a big pattern in place where Jen admits that after Biden won, we definitely know they were communicating with the tech companies. We're going to have to find out if there's anything happening during the government as well. More will be revealed there. But meanwhile, we've got Eric Schmidt. Remember, Eric Schmidt is the Attorney General for the great state of Missouri that is doing some amazingly heavy lifting, including deposing Jen Psaki, who we just heard from, and our friend Anthony Fauci, who had a very long deposition last week. Eric Schmidt, AG for Missouri, says, breaking in our deposition of the FBI agent, Elvis Chan, who we talked about previously. He was the liaison from the FBI to the social media companies. Guess what? We found that the FBI plays a big role in working with the social media companies to censor speech. It wasn't just what Jen Psaki was talking about COVID misinformation after the election, after Joe Biden won. No. It's also weekly meetings with social media companies ahead of the 2020 election to ask for account takedowns. FBI agent Elvis Chan, in a deposition with the Missouri Attorney General, admits that they had weekly meetings with social media companies ahead of the 2020 election to ask for account takedowns. Okay, there it is. That's the government involvement. That's the government, as a government actor, actively censoring the social media companies. Chan, according to Eric Schmidt, says the FBI, FITF, and senior CISA officials had meetings with social media companies in the lead up to the 2020 election, in which Chan personally told social media companies that there could potentially be a Russian hack and leak operation shortly before the election. Oh, weird. It sort of mirrors exactly what we're talking about with Twitter. Those meetings were initially done quarterly, then monthly, then weekly, heading into 2020. Don't you just love it? Chan stated that the FBI regularly sent social media companies lists of URLs and social media accounts that should be taken down because they were disinformation. And they were from, quote, malign foreign influence operations. They just make up crap. That's called actual truth from the New York Post. The FBI then inquired whether the platforms have taken down the content. Okay, so they get flagged. The government flags it for the tech companies. The tech companies then censor it. Then the FBI says, did you take that down? On many occasions, the platforms took down the accounts flagged by the FBI. There it is. Right there, right? So all of the connection is done now. Eric Schmidt threads the needle. So for all of the Matt Taibbi critics who say there was no government official involved in any of the leaks, you don't need it directly from the Twitter leaks. The FBI just confirmed it under oath in testimony with Eric Schmidt. So that's that. Now, this lawsuit is also being brought by the Attorney General, Jeff Laundrie, out of the great state of Louisiana. He confirms this also. He says, in Tuesday's depo, Elvis Chan revealed the FBI played a big role in working with social media companies to censor speech. Weekly meetings ahead of account takedowns. Chan stated the FBI regularly sent takedown notices, and they did it. Okay, two state attorney generals saying the federal government FBI was telling social media to censor stories during the election. Absolutely disgusting, reprehensible. Government censorship. Now, people have a lot of questions about this, including Josh Hawley. Senator Josh Hawley says that he's got a lot of questions for Biden. The Disinformation Governance Board was supposed to be wrapped up, deleted, no longer available. But as we know, the government doesn't stop when these things are discovered. No. They instead roll them into new programs. They're going to recreate this. They're not going to call it anything as dystopian as the Disinformation Governance Board this time. They're not going to put some psychopath like Nina Jankowicz in charge. No, they're not going to make those mistakes again because they know that America didn't like the sound of any of that. Josh Hawley on what he intends to do to protect free speech in America.
Well, what we know is that these groups, and one major group in particular, was actually sending memos to this disinformation board, apparently advocating for policy, sending it to them. Remember, this board supposedly doesn't even exist yet, and here you have the liberal dark money groups know all about it. They are emailing policy memos to the group, to the disinformation board, and saying, here's what you ought to do. So you have this collusion between the liberal big money interests, between big tech. We know that the disinformation board was setting up a special arrangement with the big tech companies so that they could meet and coordinate their censorship. It's unbelievable stuff, Sean, and this administration has lied about it at every turn.
They've used it. They used it openly to get elected. I don't know if they were communicating with Elvis Chan, but they were using big tech. They were using censorship. They were using the same tools, fighting against misinformation and disinformation in order to save American lives or something? What? They have to stop the New York Post story so that nobody dies and that Trump doesn't win or something like this? Why can't people decide for themselves what that is? Now, Josh Hawley sent a letter over to the departments. Let's see what this one looks like. In a letter to the Department of Homeland Security, Honorable Alejandro Mayorkas, drafted on November 30th, 2022, coming from Senator Josh Hawley. He says, Dear Secretary Alejandro, I write concerning new documents relating to Nina Jankowicz. And she was that singing sort of puppet who liked to sing about misinformation and disinformation. You know, something, disinformation. I'm a lunatic and something. Celebration, right? It was weird. And it was all over the place. But now Josh Hawley has a question about this. And the Disinformation Governance Board, I've got questions. As you know, on June 7th, 2022, Grassley and I expressed alarm over your decision to establish the Disinformation Board within DHS. In that letter, we published documents obtained through a whistleblower that outlined the pervasive scope and the ambitions of the Disinfo Board. It's clear, based on the latest documents, that you have finally, he says, turned over that the department has still not told the truth about its continuing efforts to censor political speech. So it's not done, right? The fact that Elon got control of Twitter, it's not over. Like Facebook is still going to do it. YouTube is still going to do it. We'll see how long this stream lasts. And all of them are still in this big game. They didn't even talk about the Hunter files in most parts of the media until, very reluctantly today. So the government is just going to say, we better gobble up all of that power this time. Now we can't outsource that to Twitter. We'll just bring it inside. And enough Americans have been so indoctrinated by this extremist MAGA rhetoric that maybe they'll buy it. So Hawley continues. He says, on May 4th, in response to my questioning, you testified the board has not yet met. That was untrue. You lied. Documents that your own department recently produced to my office show that the Disinformation Governance Steering Group met as early as February 4th, 2022, and was meeting on a weekly basis. So Alejandro Mayorkas evidently just lied directly to Josh Hawley's face. Hawley says in May 2022, have you guys met yet to talk about your business? Alejandro says, no, definitely haven't met. Turns out they get the documents. Oh yeah, they were meeting weekly. All right. So if you think we have a functional government or ever, can sort of revert to a functional government, I have my doubts. Because they're openly lying to each other. They're not on the same team at all in any way, shape, or form. They are openly at war and lying to each other. Now, shortly after Janke was onboarded, she requested a copy of the last 2 to 3 steering group meeting agendas because she missed them. She wanted to make sure that they weren't spreading disinfo in there. Despite your assertions to the contrary, Alejandro, the board appeared to have operational authorities. Jankowicz indicated that it was the responsibility of the Disinformation Board to ensure that their respective components implement, execute, and follow the board decisions. Our whistleblower documents previously revealed that the board was engaging with Twitter on possible censorship activities. These new records show even more big tech companies were involved. Disinformation Board planned to meet with Meta, somebody named Nathaniel Gleischer, formerly of Facebook, who was the head of security policy over there. He was also at that company when they suppressed the Hunter Biden laptop story, and they also had contacts with the Omdiyar Network, a liberal dark money group, which has poured millions into combating misinformation. Okay, right? So it's like political spending under a new label. They can do way more if they call their efforts battling misinformation than it is about converting you to vote Democrat. Okay, it's a very different strategy, but the end game is the same. The documents further show that the Disinformation Board executive director, Nina, repeatedly pushed for the DHS to establish analytic exchange with industry partners, possibly portals, for big tech companies, to coordinate speech suppression with the government. She also pressed for so-called disinformation experts to meet with the board, including one who wrote that conservative consumers are more likely to be susceptible to fake news and misinformation. Those stupid Republicans. They're so dumb. If only they knew that Anthony Fauci was always right, then maybe our country would be in a better place. Another expert that Janke identified has posted about why poor whites chant Trump. Evidently, this is a friend of Janke, and argued that anti-immigrant disinformation is strongly associated with the ideology of exclusion and native supremacy that underpin right-wing popularism and far-right extremism, is a friend of Janke. We now know that when you finally abolish the Disinfo Board, the board's deputy, Elizabeth Cozy, was hired to the White House, where she works as the National Security Council's Resilience and Response Directorate, which sounds like a made-up fake position anyways. A federal court, writes Hawley, and he's finishing up, he says, a federal court recently concluded that an official in your department, Mayorkas, is, quote, supervising the nerve center of federally directed censorship. Footnote 7. What does that mean? Footnote is over to storage, is over a court document, actually. Let's take a quick look at that. See if we can pull that up. If I can grab that link. Yeah, here this is. Okay, so this is what Hawley is referencing. This is a memo order that came out in November. And this looks like it is in the case of the big tech collusion lawsuit. And I don't know if we covered this one. Federal defendants filed a motion. Yeah, I think we did actually cover this one. This was the order about whether they will be sitting for depositions. Okay, and so in this, they talked about the nerve center, which is what Hawley is communicating about. All right, so let's pull this document back up. Let's wrap it up. In light of that, I would have hoped that you would be more forthcoming, says Hawley. Instead, you've continued your blatant attempt to avoid transparency and sidestep congressional oversight. The documents you turned over to my office 6 months after I requested them are so heavily redacted that most are illegible. So that Congress can consider remedial legislation, Hawley says, please provide unredacted copies of all documents to Congress so that I can oversee you. As part of my investigation into the Disinfo Board, I will be releasing for the public all documents in my possession so Americans can judge for themselves your agency's efforts to censor speech. Yes, that's great news from Josh Hawley. So he's releasing everything that he's got over to America, which will be very good for all of us to see. Signed by Josh Hawley, United States Senator sitting, and we're excited to see what those documents have for us. And of course, we will continue to cover that. Thank you for liking this video wherever it is you're watching it, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. But the next segment is here. So hopefully you didn't leave or go anywhere, because we're talking about YOEL Roth. YOEL Roth. Who is this guy? He's the former Twitter head of trust and safety, and he's been giving a lot of interviews since he was fired by Elon for being somebody that didn't really focus too much on safety and somebody that nobody trusted. Now he's talking all about it. Now, this person was in charge of a lot at Twitter, and he made a lot of the decisions, including whether to nuke Kayleigh McEnany and whether James Wood should be banned from the platform, and many others. All of these decisions made up in the years and months before the 2020 election, which many people think had a big impact. Now, he is also the subject of an FEC complaint. The Republicans filed a complaint against Twitter, and they named him in this. And we're going to take a look at this document, including YOEL's affidavit, where he signs a document and he swears under penalty of perjury certain things about his meetings with the government. But before we read that, let's learn a little bit more about who this guy is, because he is somebody who is not in favor of, let's say, neutral political ideologies. The former head of Twitter's trust and safety, YOEL Roth, communicates exactly how terrified he is of Trump supporters.
But what are you worried about these Twitter files coming out? And what was that experience like having Kellyanne, who's always in control of herself, sicking this MAGA trolls on you?
It's terrifying.
MAGA trolls.
I thought I was going to be a college professor.
Did you hear that question? Sicking MAGA trolls on you.
But what are you worried about these Twitter files coming out? And what was that experience like having Kellyanne, who's always in control of herself, sicking this MAGA trolls on you?
Kellyanne Conway.
It's terrifying. I thought I was going to be a college professor for a living.
Mm-hmm.
I got a PhD and was doing research that nobody cared about, and then I was like, oh, this platform thing is cool. Like, I can go and do research there, and then one thing led to another, and all of a sudden we apply a misinformation label to Donald Trump's account, and I'm on the cover of the New York Post, and that is a deeply terrifying experience. And I say this from a position of unquestioned privilege as a cis white male. Like, the internet is much scarier and much worse for lots of other people who aren't me, but it was pretty fucking scary for a long time.
Content warning.
As a result of that.
Beep.
When you get targeted in some of these ways, it's hard to differentiate between what is somebody just online trying to rattle you and what's a real threat. You see in things like Pizzagate that online conspiracies can mobilize very real and very direct offline violence, and I worry about that. I had been doxxed years before by teenagers, actually. They're always behind it. But, I saw those harms, I experienced those harms, and now it was those harms through a mainstream news outlet being held up in the Oval Office by the former president of the United States, and that is deeply terrifying.
Terrified, absolutely terrified, that a lot of what he did was highly partisan towards a political party towards a political candidate, towards an entire demographic of Americans. And his platform censored them, right? Literally shut them off, turned off their ability to have conversations. And he's a little bit concerned about some of the blowback when there's reaction to that. Now, they are openly engaging in this political warfare, right? They're stepping into the arena, but then they don't like the consequences. They want to ban everybody and control all of the conversation. But when anybody objects to that, it's misinformation, it's dangerous, it's disinformation. And I guess the only thing you can do in that situation is just censor harder. Just shut everybody up harder than you were before. Because if you've already banned them, and they're still angry and they're ranting about you everywhere else, I guess you got to go everywhere else and shut them up over there too, right? You got to, as a unilateral maneuver, dictate how speech is to be redefined in America so that this guy can feel safe at night, sleeping well, as a very highly privileged cis white male, whatever labels he just went through. I don't even remember him, but he's got a whole lot of them there, and he's very All right, so we'll just carry on now. Another clip came that I think is very, very insightful. We can tease a lot out of this. Twitter's former head of trust and safety admits that they created a whole slew of infrastructure after 2016. They didn't want what happened there to happen again. And after it did, after Trump won, all of the big tech platforms sprung into action. They created the infrastructure to support future election integrity.
Beginning in 2017, every platform, Twitter included, started to invest really heavily in building out an election integrity function.
Oh, interesting.
This was what I spent my life doing from the middle of 2017 onwards.
That's it.
We were focused on not just US elections, but how do you protect against malign interference in foreign elections? How do you think about different threat actors in this space? And also critically, how do you think about what those threat actors might do? So as we are threat modeling the 2020 election, it's obvious to think about the most influential thing that impacted the 2016 election, which was the hack and leak campaign organized by the Russian government.
Oh, the Russian government, the hack and leak campaign organized by the Russian government, which was not even validated. What's he talking about?
And so we would have been stupid not to think about that risk.
Right. So what happened there?
And so the morning of the Hunter Biden story in the New York Post happens. And it was weird, right? With distance and with what we know now, we forget some of the weirdness. But do you remember the laptop repair guy? Yeah. Do you remember the uncertainty of the whole story? We didn't know what to believe. We didn't know what was true.
No.
There was smoke. And ultimately for me,
there were emails, there were logs, there were receipts, there was a whole dossier. In fact, at some point, right, many people had the full hard drive and stuff was dripping and leaking out. It was corroborated. There was Secret Service emails. We went through it all. We had Tony Bobulinski. We had primary source witnesses. We had people who were on the bake statements with Hunter Biden. But they couldn't see through that. Or I guess they could, but they were looking for justifications for an alternative narrative that they could craft and control. And they found one.
It didn't reach a place where I was comfortable removing this content from Twitter. But it set off every single one of my finely tuned APT28 hack and leak campaign alarm bells.
So nobody cares about your stupid numbers. Okay, so he wasn't comfortable removing it. I'm sure you believe that. But all of his protocols, APT20.
Do you remember the uncertainty of the whole story? We didn't know what to believe. We didn't know what was true. There was smoke. And ultimately, for me, it didn't reach a place where I was comfortable removing this content from Twitter.
Right.
But it set off every single one of my finely tuned APT28 hack and leak campaign alarm bells.
So it looked possibly problematic.
Everything about it looked like a hack and leak and smelled like a hack and leak. But it didn't get there for me. And this is, the work of content moderation is write a policy, create a system of governance, and then evaluate some new crazy situation against those standards.
Why the need to do it?
But they didn't do that. They created all of the standards, and then they tried to come up with fake excuses as to why Kayleigh McEnany's account had to go, why James Wood's account had to go. All of them were created out of thin air. It wasn't hack materials. It wasn't anything that was in violation of Twitter policy. They just didn't like the story. And so Eli, or I keep calling Eli. Why do I keep saying that? YOEL ROTH is somebody who didn't feel comfortable with removing it, but they did anyways. And because it hit all of his APT, protocols or whatever. Now, here is another clip of our friend Yoel. Oh, Eli's a director, somebody said. That's why I keep... What did he do? Is he like a great director? Why do I keep thinking of his name? Have I ever seen him in one of his movies? Why do I keep saying his name? Let's just detour this real quick. Eli Roth. What has he made? Screenwriter. I don't know. All right, so we'll get over it. This is Yoel Roth. Roth is out there now talking about how speech can be very dangerous. And not only is news about a presidential candidate's son problematic for their presidential candidate, but also other speech probably should be censored and limited because it can be dangerous as well.
Okay, Babylon Bee, which is what got him to buy the thing, I think.
That's the
one which was not particularly funny. The Babylon Bee's Man of the Year is Rachel Levine. Not funny.
Yeah. You can.
I didn't agree they should have taken that down, but go ahead.
You know, it's interesting. It's interesting to think about what the competing tensions around that are. And I want to start by acknowledging that the targeting and the victimization of the trans community on Twitter is very real, very life-threatening, and extraordinarily serious.
Life-threatening.
We have seen from a number of Twitter accounts, including libs of TikTok notably, that there are orchestrated campaigns that particularly are singling out a group that is already particularly vulnerable within society. And so, yeah, not only is it not funny, but it is dangerous, and it does contribute to an environment that makes people unsafe in the world. So
do you see how insane these people are? If you have any political opinions about what's going on in any policy issue anywhere, you might be contributing, if it impacts somebody, which every policy does, right? If anything impacts somebody's livelihood, right? If you pass a law about anything, it's going to impact somebody. And if you say, well, I've got a disagreement with that law, I'm disagreeing with that law that might be saving somebody, they'll just turn around and say, what are you trying to kill that person? Because everything has this domino effect and everything spirals into something. And you can play this game of, where does it stop, right? It's the slippery slope. It's nonstop. And he just decides what's comfortable for him and what's funny and what's not funny and what contributes to a real dangerous environment and what doesn't.
Start from a premise that it's fucked up.
Content warning. Beep.
Again, let's look at what Twitter's written policies are. Twitter's written policies prohibit misgendering, full stop. And the Babylon Bee, in the name of satire, misgendered Admiral Rachel Levine. Twitter...
Satire.
Nominally, but it's still misgendering.
Satire, right? So she even this woman's like, yeah, but it's satire though. Like, are you serious about this? It's satire.
You know, there can be a very long and academic discussion of satire and sort of the lines there. Interestingly, Apple tried to tease out this question of satire and political commentary in their own guidelines, which I think are also fraught. But you know, we landed on the side of enforcing our rules as written.
And that's how it got bought by Elon Musk, just in case you're interested. He was mad.
Yeah, he was very mad about that, and that's why they bought it. Now, I think she said that they didn't actually, that they shouldn't have removed it. Let me listen to that one more time.
That's the one which was
Let's play
Babylon. That. Okay, Babylon Bee, which is what got him to buy the thing, I think.
That's the
one which was not particularly funny. The Babylon Bee's Man of the Year is Rachel Levine. Not funny.
Yeah. And you can ask
I didn't agree they should have taken that down, but go ahead.
I don't agree that should have been taken down, she said, but go ahead. Yeah, interesting. So even she disagreed with him. So, yeah, right. That's a censor who's in charge of censoring things because he wants a narrative. He wants his own little world, right? He's the dictator. He gets to decide what's safe, what's not, what's free speech, what isn't, what's appropriate, what's not. It's lunacy. You can't have a standard like that when you have a bunch of people who get to decide, right? That's why we have the First Amendment. It sets the baseline. That's where it all starts. You can use that as as an operative tool. You can use the case law as operative, but you can't just decide what Eli, the director we just listened to, what he's very interested in. Okay, he can't be the purveyor of free speech in America. All right, so this letter now goes over to this. He's not a Hollywood director. All right. Now, I want to show you this before we read through some of this. As Exhibit A, we have the declaration. It's not an affidavit. It's a declaration of Yoel Roth. We'll come back to this in a minute. Let's set some foundation. But he signed this on December 17, 2020. Yoel Roth, head of site integrity at Twitter, Inc. Now, how did this all originate? It is going to the Federal Election Commission. They say, "Dear Mr. Jordan, we write on behalf of our client, Twitter. There's a complaint that came our direction from the Republicans, the RNC. The complaint asserts that Twitter made an impermissible corporate in-kind contribution to Biden when they censored the New York Post story." Now, right, it's like you gave him a bunch of free advertising. You gave him a bunch of campaign value by censoring the story. But they respond, they say, no. It wasn't a violation of any federal law. The decision to block the hacked material was because it was hacked material. Twitter's content moderation decision was not coordinated with Biden, but yes, it was, because there was no coordination or even expenditure. There was no in-kind contribution. They sent emails. Twitter's enforcement of its rules and policies fall within the commission's media exemptions. And fourth, Section 230, as well as others, preclude liability for Twitter's content moderation decisions. Right, so all of that comes into play. Now, they go through some of the factual background here. This is the government's response. This is Twitter saying, we didn't do anything wrong here. Now, we go down to YOEL's affidavit. Republicans are angry. They send a letter. The Democrats respond. They lawyer up. They get lawyers on behalf of Twitter, and they confirm these documents. They say, "My name is YOEL Roth. This declaration is made upon my personal knowledge and belief." He says, "I'm the head of site integrity at Twitter. I'm part of their trust and safety department. In this role, I lead the site integrity team, which assesses content posted on Twitter." He says that visitors to Twitter's website and users of the mobile app can report content that may violate the policies of the company. Twitter also uses machine learning programs to identify content that may violate the policies. He says that the site integrity team receives and reviews reports, including from security consultants. Okay. We're looking for the government here. The site integrity team assesses content flagged for review. Twitter regularly enforces its policies, including the distribution of hacked materials and the private information policy, right? You can't send hacked stuff out and you can't post other people's private stuff. The Twitter service team assists with both implementations of all of this. So that's the background. Now, YOEL continues, he says, "As a matter of practice, neither I nor other members of the site integrity team communicate directly with persons outside Twitter that report content for violating our policies. For routine content moderation decisions, the site integrity team makes the decisions. For high-profile matters like James Wood and like Kayleigh McEnany, in content that presents more complex considerations, the site integrity team performs an initial assessment and escalates the matter internally for a final decision, some of which we read through today. They bring in Vijaya, you get Ro Khanna, all of them start sending letters saying, we're angry about this." YOEL continues, he says, "When evaluating potentially hacked materials to determine if there is a violation of the policies, we considered public declarations of hacking as determinative." So they just take your word for it. "If no such claim is made, the site integrity team considers the indicia of hacking, and then they get to decide for themselves whether the material was hacked or not." He says, "Now, since 2018, this is YOEL, head of Twitter. Since 2018, he's admitting, I have had regular meetings with the Office of the Director of National Intelligence." At that time, this would have been Trump's ODNI. "The Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, and industry peers regarding election security." So they were actually meeting directly, regular meetings. During these weekly meetings, the federal law enforcement agencies, okay, all of the intelligence agencies, they communicated that they expected, quote, hack and leak operations by state actors might occur shortly during the period before the 2020 presidential election, likely in October. They were pre-suading, they were pre-budding the story that was going to come up. They were getting rid of it before it was going to pop up. They were putting Twitter on notice. Get ready. Trump's people are going to leak this thing and it's going to be a big problem. So we're going to need you to really batten down the hatches for us. "I was told," says YOEL, "in these meetings that the intelligence community, FBI and others, DHS, DNI, expected that individuals associated with political campaigns would be subject to hacking attacks, and material obtained through those hacking attacks would be disseminated all over social media, including on Twitter. These expectations of hack and leak operations were discussed throughout 2020. I also learned at these meetings that there were rumors that a hack and leak operation would involve Hunter Biden. You're kidding, and it did. On October 14th, I learned from media coverage that New York Post had posted articles that were purportedly on the hard drive. Site integrity team determined that in the information that it was obtained through hacking based on all sorts of things, among other things, the type of material, the sourcing described in the articles, the information security community's initial reactions, and so on. Okay, so then they turned this over to the 50 or so intelligence officials who all drafted that letter and gave them cover. So it's the same thing we saw in the Michael Sussman case. You go to the media, you say, the FBI is investigating this. Then you go to the FBI and you say, hey, FBI, the media is investigating this. And so you play both sides and you try to get both of them to go so that you can lean on both of them. You go to the Washington Post and you say, I've got this amazing story. The FBI is running with this. Why don't you publish this and break it? Guess what? They publish something and break it. You take that story, you go right back over to the FBI. You say, can you believe this? The Washington Post just published about this story. Trump collusion. Are you looking into this? And then when the FBI looks into it, then you can say there's an open investigation from the FBI. Same thing here. They're doing the same exact thing. The policy is created through Twitter. FBI says there might be a hack. The National Security Intelligence, so-called, they say it is true. They all have their bases covered. The materials in the New York Post articles, writes YOEL, also contain personal information, email, telephone numbers, and so sharing them on Twitter violated the private information policy. So they've got two layers now. Problem is, a lot of the things that were being shared and were being censored and banned, like James Wood's account and like Kayleigh McEnany's account, did not have any of the PIP stuff at all. There was no personal information at all. It was just Hunter Biden smoking crack on a bed. These materials were problematic. Now, we on this channel, right, we listened to Tony Bobulinski. We had corroborating witnesses. We had people were doing full, what's it called within email, DKIP analysis of all of the headers and emails. It was corroborated. Everybody knew it was real, but this knucklehead couldn't figure it out. Or he could, but he just wanted to censor it because he's a political hack. Given the high profile nature of the material and the publisher, he says, they don't trust the New York Post either. Site integrity team escalated the New York Post articles for further review. Twitter's trust and safety leadership determined that the New York Post violated the hack materials policy and they executed enforcement. All done in October to shut up a bad story. FBI got to him and had him confirmed that they were, there it is. The FBI just picked up the phone and said, oh, there it is. We told you it was coming because they had the laptop for a lot longer. At 10:20 a.m. Pacific time on October 14th, the site integrity team implemented the enforcement action. Per the procedures and sanctions set out in the policies, the site integrity team blocked Twitter users from sharing links over Twitter to the applicable articles and prevented users who had previously sent the tweets from sharing those articles from sending the tweets until they deleted the tweets violating the policies. Total censorship went into full steam. I did not, says YOEL, I did not receive any communications from or have any communications with representatives of Biden for president. That's okay. They sent emails to your company. Elon just posted those. And the Democratic National Committee or any of the other agents before Twitter implemented the enforcement actions. All right, so this guy is being very clever. I did not receive any communications from or have any communications with Biden for president. Okay, he didn't, but the rest of his company did. We saw that in Matt Taibbi's thread. He already communicated that Biden's people were sending, via liaisons, takedown notices to Twitter. So he's being very cute here, right? He knows that Biden was communicating with their agency, but his lawyer said, we're going to just keep all of that out of there. To the best of my knowledge, no Twitter employee received any communications from or had any communications with representatives of Biden for president, the DNC, or any of their agents regarding the New York Post articles before Twitter implemented the enforcement actions on October 14th, right? He's also limiting the scope now of his response. So he's only talking about communications about the New York Post articles. He's not talking about Kayleigh McEnany or James Woods. Limiting this. Now, so that must mean that he knows that they were in fact communicating with Biden, but he's being very cute here. Twitter is openly communicating and having liaisons with the DNC and the Bidens, but in this declaration, he leaves all of that out. And he actually fakes like he's not communicating with them at all. He signed all of that on December 17th. So total liar about really what was. He's not actually lying, in this statement. I think that is all probably true. But he is being dishonest, I would say, in how he is presenting this. He knows that he was colluding with them. They know that they were colluding. The emails showed it, right? Elon published those. In fact, let's go take a look at one of them. We saw that previously from Matt Taibbi. Carolyn Strom sent out an email. Kayleigh McEnany sent out an email. In fact, at the very start of this whole story, these were the reports from the DNC. This is the email. October 25th. YOEL Roth signed that affidavit in December after the elections were over. But an additional report came in from the DNC right there. I grabbed the first one, defer to safety on the real James Woods. The DNC was asking for James Woods to be nuked. And YOEL Roth was, no, everything was above board. Here's another one from the Biden team. October 24th, just a week before the election. More to review from the Bidens. Actual emails from @twitter.com users. 5 of them listed. Thanks all. Person responds. Handled these. Got them all taken care of. All removed from the platform. So that was YOEL Roth. And now, of course, confirmed to be removed from Twitter and a little bit dishonest as far as we can tell. But all of it is much ado about nothing, according to CNN.
These are documents related to the internal discussions at Twitter in 2020 around a laptop that was found at a laptop repair shop that contained all kinds of really outrageous stuff from the president's son, right? And inside Twitter, what you can see are all of these people who work there saying, is this real? This feels like Russian disinformation. Maybe it is real arguments about how they should treat this material in an election year. Now, what some want you to think is that this was censorship by big tech, and that's why the president is saying you should throw out the Constitution because big tech is in cahoots with American democracy. That's what the president thinks. But what it sort of shows is a real struggle at an important platform for how to deal with something so outrageous, so explosive, and what to actually do with it.
Okay, so they turn it over to Trump. They say, oh, it's all Trump's fault. And Trump's reaction is something that should should outshine any of the conversation about Hunter Biden. In fact, all that we saw was not intentional cover-up or collusion between the DNC, the Biden people, the FBI, the DNI, DHS, and Twitter, and some of these big tech platforms to control the outcome of an election. No, it was just people who were doing their due diligence. They were just trying to figure out how to deal with a very difficult situation and how to work their way through it. So that's what CNN is talking about today. That's YOEL Roth, not the Hollywood director, who is an interesting individual. We'll just leave it at that. All right, my friends. And so we got one final segment before we wrap it up on the day and jump into our after party with your questions and your comments, and we hang out for a bit more. We have to wrap it up with some vindication from Donald Trump. Vindicated. Donald Trump has been confirmed to have been accurate in his assessment and his criticisms and condemnations of the media. This is Donald Trump sitting down with 60 Minutes and Leslie Stahl. He says, hey, Leslie, this Hunter Biden laptop is kind of a big story. Why aren't you covering this?
I think it's one of the biggest scandals I've ever seen, and you don't cover it. Because you want to talk about...
Well, because it can't be verified.
You want to talk about insignificant things.
I'm telling you.
Of course it can be verified. Excuse me, they found the laptop. Leslie.
It can't be verified.
What can't be verified?
The laptop.
Why do you say that?
Because
even the family hasn't... The family on the laptop, he's gone into hiding. For 5 days, he's gone into hiding.
He's preparing for your debate.
Oh, it's taken him 5 days to prepare? I doubt it. Okay,
all right. So let's get back to the name calling.
So Leslie Stahl standing in the background crying about, no, it hasn't been confirmed. I mean, it hasn't been confirmed. We're not even sure that it's real. You know, I mean, blah, 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 because she hates Trump and she wants the Biden administration or Biden campaign to win. This is another one from Donald Trump. You can see there is Martha McSally back there. Shout out to Martha McSally. And shout out to Arizona.
To call Biden a criminal. Why is that?
He is a criminal. He's a criminal. He got caught, read his laptop, and you know who's a criminal? You're a criminal for not reporting it. You are a criminal for not reporting it. Let me tell you something. Joe Biden is a criminal, and he's been a criminal for a long time, and you're a criminal in the media for not reporting it. Good luck, everybody. Have a good time.
Good luck, everybody. Have a good time, you bunch of criminal maniacs. Now, of course, we do know that they all lied about it. And, I don't know that it's a criminal fraud charge or anything like that, but it was, in fact, pretty disgusting. And, that was Trump. I think we played that clip already, sort of beating up Joe Biden about this. But others are confirming that Trump was right. Joe Rogan sat down with Jocko Willink, and they talked about the deep state. They're both finally acknowledging, man, it's a real thing.
The collusion between the media and the government is pretty apparent, especially left-wing media and left-wing government. It's pretty fucking apparent that there's some narratives that get shared back and forth,
warning.
And they have talking points, and they don't talk about things they're not supposed to, like the Hunter Biden laptop story or something that's actual news. Just gets
crazy
story. Because if that was the Donald Trump Jr. laptop, holy fucking shit,
Content
would that
warning,
lead
sorry.
every night? I mean, this whole Russia collusion story has turned out to be completely nonsense.
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's insane. That was 3.5 years the American public was getting beat down with the Russia collusion thing.
And it wasn't real.
And it was
not even real.
It was created.
Yeah.
We covered all of that. That was the Michael Sussman trial. That was James Baker, who's now over at Twitter. They sat down. They had this whole fake PP tape dossier that went up through Fusion GPS, back through Perkins Coie, back over to the whole thing was insane. All fictional. They created the whole thing. And then they censored the Hunter Biden laptop story.
It was created by the Democratic Party. Maybe that's not the exact thing, but it was created by people that were insiders.
It was pretty much the Democratic Party. It was Hillary Clinton's campaign. Jake Sullivan was on there, and they had Michael Sussman, who was working with Mark Elias. They were faking the whole story.
Democratic Party.
Yeah, and no one's being held accountable. No one's going to jail for it. But they were trying to literally impeach Trump for some shit that they made up.
Yeah.
But look, Trump's not a perfect guy.
That's true.
This is not a pro-Trump speech.
I think it's safe to say Trump is not a perfect
guy. But this fucking this thing that he kept saying about the deep state,
those F words in this.
It's real.
Yeah.
It's 100% real.
It is real.
The swamp is real.
The swamp is definitely
They're
real.
fucking real monsters, and
they're real monsters.
They're really trying to get rid of them by lying.
They're out there. All right. So if you want to listen to the Joe Rogan show, go subscribe on Spotify. But he's right. I think a lot of people are sort of recognizing this finally, that there's a lot here. Elon confirmed it. What the Twitter censors did was totally disgusting, and Trump has been vindicated on this story. And so that, my friends, is it for us on the day. We covered a lot of ground here. We have some time left to give some shout outs to those super chats that came in. And so I'm grateful for those. But that was the Hunter Biden Twitter file saga. There will be much more to come. We read through the entire tweet thread. We covered the big lie that was promoted by Joe Biden, Jen Psaki, and others. And we confirmed that this was not just something that was taking place before the election. The government was involved. The FBI was involved. There were weekly meetings that Eric Schmidt and AG Jeff Landry from Missouri and Louisiana have confirmed. In depositions are coming out. We know that Hawley's also investigating the Disinformation Governance Board, whatever that's being rebranded as. We have this individual, YOEL, who communicated to us that he feels a certain way about a lot of issues and not a big fan of Republicans, MAGA, or, anybody who sort of disagrees with his political takes. He swore under oath that he was meeting with the government as well. CNN doesn't care. And of course, Trump was vindicated. A lot of his complaints turned out to be real. Even Joe Rogan agrees. And so that, my friends, is it for us on the day. Let's take a look at some of your comments and in the chat, some of the super chats that came in. Pulling those up right now. Thank you to everybody for sending those in. Let's see what came in here. We had just a couple today. First one is from Gypsy Soul. Could First Amendment prior restraint be applicable? Yeah, so this is where we're talking about government action, right? A lot of people are going to say that there was no government actor in these cases because it was just Biden communicating with Twitter. These are two private companies. When you have a state actor, a government actor, that's when you start to be able to have claims against the government because it's now the government doing something. It's not two private citizens. In this case, yes, right. That's what people are looking for. They're looking for Elvis Chan. They're looking for YOEL telling us that he's having regular meetings with all of the FBI people or, intelligence community people. That's the government putting their thumb on the throats, on the vocal cords of America. And that's an infringement of our First Amendment rights. They're not allowed to infringe upon our free speech rights. Chris Wolney says, I hope Elon is purging Twitter of Stasi operatives. I think he is. I think a lot of the bots are getting evaporated, which is very good news. Geomancy's here. Now he's on YouTube. You can subscribe to him. He says, love you, brother. Finally finding my own path. Well, that's awesome, Geo. I'm glad to hear that. It's always about that. We're always constantly finding our own paths. I'm constantly finding my own path. I had an amazing dinner last night with my family, and my uncle and my dad were there. And of course, we're talking about what they're up to. Well, my uncle's, in his 70s, and what are they doing today and the next 3 days? They're going to a class on finding your purpose for 3.5 days. We were laughing about it last night. I'm like, oh, good. Well, hopefully you can figure out what you're doing. He's super successful and he's basically finished, but it never ends, Geo. So keep it up. Get used to just keep finding your purpose. I'm always working on it. Zulu says, got here late. Well, we'll allow it, Zulu. Good news is it's recorded. This half of the year is bad timing, he says. Did I miss the segment on which parts of the Constitution can be arbitrary? Oh, this half of the year is bad timing. So I guess. Oh, I see. Probably because of the time change. Did I miss the segment on which part of the Constitution can be arbitrarily jettisoned so long as one is sufficiently insistent that they have a legitimate grievance? What are your top picks? So I think Zulu's kind of needling us on this comment a little bit about the Trump comment, that something about, the Constitution, this, that, or the other. I don't have the direct verbatim text on here, but I am typically of the mindset that we like our Constitution. I mean, if I had to jettison a part of it, it'd probably be the Commerce Clause, if you want to be honest about it, Zulu. The Commerce Clause. I'd nuke that so fast. Right out of there. Or I'd at least bring it back, to heel. If you want a serious answer, top pick is Commerce Clause. Commerce Clause gave the federal government a bunch of justification to do basically whatever they want. It is a clause that it's exploited. Anything is commerce these days. And so that gives the federal government power to regulate everything. Now, I love the Constitution. I don't agree that the Constitution should be suspended or, deleted or anything. I don't know that Trump is making that argument. I didn't read it with a lot of enthusiasm. Let me just put it that way. He has responded to this message, right? He actually responded on Twitter and he said people are misinterpreting what he said. There's a problem with explaining. Ronald Reagan said, if you're explaining, you're losing. So take that for what it's worth. But yeah, if I had to jettison a part of the Constitution, easily, Commerce Clause, gone. Zulu says, are we still abolishing Section 230 or not? I feel like that was a thing and it isn't anymore. It's hard to keep up. Well, I mean, I think the reason people wanted to abolish, another one from Zulu. Thank you, Zulu. Very generous today, and I appreciate that. I think that Section 230, people wanted to repeal it because the content platforms were acting like editors and like moderators, and they were censoring speech. If they didn't censor any speech, honestly, like if it was just a platform and you got to pick your algo and you got to pick, turn on trust and safety, YOEL, Roths, algo, whatever, right? If it was all fair, if it was a fair baseline, then there wouldn't be a need for liability protection. Or I think in other words, you could absolutely revoke Section 230 and you just say it's all fair game, right? We hold the publishers, or you could even extend it further, right? As long as they hold that line, we're not going to hold them liable. But if Elon just says, okay, the base layer is free speech, you're okay. Like, I'm okay with giving them protection because yes, you want to protect them from people saying bad things. You want to protect Elon from a Kanye post. You want to protect Elon or Facebook or any of them from, something that Ye says, right? But if they're not doing that, and if they're only editorializing against one political party, only against, Republicans or whatever, then they don't deserve those same protections. The protections are to enable, they're to be useful. The utility of the protection is to encourage speech, but they're not encouraging speech. They're censoring speech. And so why do they get the protections? If they want to be little editors and little dictators, yeah, YOEL should be subject to lawsuits. Okay, sue him then. Sue him for throwing out James Woods. And maybe he'll be named in some of these lawsuits, and we'll see. Because it's not Section 230. What's the purpose of the law? What's the utility of the law? It's to encourage free speech and limit liability. But they're exploiting it for their own gains. And I don't really care what the law says, as long as free speech is protected. Craft liability protection, craft however you want to facilitate that, because I think that's the most important thing that we've got. But all right, my friends, I think that was it for those super chats which came in. I'm very grateful to those. And thank you, Zulu. Zulu always asks some spicy questions, which are always a lot of fun. So thanks for sending those in, Zulu, and the rest of the super chats. Chris, Geo, and by the way, you can subscribe to Geomancy. He's on YouTube. I don't think he's Geomancy Games anymore. He's just Geomancy. It's kind of like Kanye, kind of like Oprah, which is good. I might have to do that. Maybe we'll just go with Robert, and then we'll just go to Rob, and then we'll just go to Ro. I'll be like, yay, Ro. Hey, Ro, check out the Ro show. We'll see. We'll continue to workshop it. I'm not in love with it. But all right, so that, my friends, was it for us on the super chats that came in on the day. And I think we covered a lot of ground. I think we did. And I don't know why the screen was so blurry all day today. I'm going to take a look at that and try to figure that out. But we will upload all of these segments. And so if it was blurry, the segments will be uploaded later and they'll be at their original full HD quality. So we'll get there later on. But that, my friends, was it for us on the show today. Now we're gonna drop off YouTube. We're gonna drop off Facebook, and we're gonna go hang out on Locals and on Rumble for a little bit of an after party. And so I'm dropping my our Rumble link in the chat. And so head on over to Rumble if you'd like to hang out while we do some of the Locals and Twitter comments and Rumble comments. We're going to go through comments, and we've got a lot more work to do. But we're done here because all of that can be a little bit extra spicy, so we'll save it for that. But if you want to join us, head on over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com and join our community over there. I want to thank the sponsors of the show before we wrap it up for the day. Go check out robertlikesgold.com so that you can protect your savings with gold and silver. Of course, we don't want our dollars evaporating overnight, and it's looking like they're doing that. Also, forpatriots.com. Nobody wants to starve to death or freeze to death. And so if you're worried about electricity, if you're worried about survival food, forpatriots.com. Amazing. Promo code Robert, 10% off everything in the store. Amazing guarantee. They employ people right here in America. So a great company. We also have our law firm. Of course, I know many of you are not from Arizona, but a lot of people do come into Arizona. And so if you happen to know anybody, you're just listening, you're at coffee or at lunch, somebody says, oh, my daughter. Oh, what happened to your daughter? She was in Arizona. She was in Scottsdale. Oh, great. What happened? Well, the cops in Scottsdale, they just round everybody up. Everybody. They don't even ask questions. They don't even hardly do investigations. They just say, you look like you're in trouble. You're going to jail. And so we can help people who've been charged with crimes in Scottsdale, in Phoenix, in Mesa, any type of criminal charge. We're very good at what we do. 480-787-0394 or online at rrlawaz.com. Of course, we have free case evaluations, an amazing team. Our mission is to help good people charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope, not only in their cases, but beyond that, in their lives. And so thank you for supporting our team with your referrals. We're very grateful and appreciative of them. Thank you to our mods who mod down the fort for us. Vienticus Prime is never here on Mondays. He's always got game night. But K Bean was here modding down the fort for us, along with Just Cause. We've got Lean in the house. Shout out to Lean. Lean, I hope that you had an amazing weekend. Playing Hooky was also here. Did I see Ronnie? I'm not sure if Ronnie made it by, but Zulu's certainly back in the house, and Zulu became a member again. Zulu, it's good to see you. I forgot to post our member morning walk and talk today. I'm going to post that live as soon as we're done here. Did I post that today? I'm not sure if I did. I'll check it. And shout out to our other mods who swing by. That, my friends, is it for us on the day. We're going to actually end it right here for our Facebook and YouTube friends. And then we are going to continue on Rumble and the other free speech platforms. But that, my friends, is it for us. I hope you have an amazing night, and I look forward to seeing you right back here tomorrow so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Have a tremendous evening, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.